Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In the past few days, I've been testing out a bunch of teams in the Fantasy Cup Ultra League Edition because I've been wanting to find a solid team that I could recommend to you guys, especially those of you who are still struggling to reach Legend. And I wanted a team that was going to be strong and consistent against this current meta that I performed well in over several sets, so it's not just I won a few games with it and oh, it's a good team. No, this is a team that helped me climb a lot of points. So before recording the video, I went 2-4-1s with this team, and then when I was recording this video, I recorded 2 positive sets with it, and one of them is a 5-0. The team is going to be Registeel lead with Zap Cannon and Flash Cannon. Of course, if you can run it with Focus Blast, I would prefer it over the Zap Cannon, but like I said, I wasn't going to TM a legacy move off of my Registeel. And your safe swap is going to be Giratina Origin, which I think is one of the best generalists in this entire cup. Probably one of the best Pokemon in this cup. And your closer is Slurpuff, which performs really well against steel types, especially with shields down, because most of the steel types in this cup are double weak to fire, and Slurpuff has access to flamethrower, so it can one-shot most of them. Now let's get into these awesome battles. First up, we have Registeel into Tapu Fini. Okay, so amazing lead for us. Opponent's gonna swap, and he swaps into Excadrill, and I'm immediately gonna swap into Giratina Origin. Now this is a little bit tricky because 2 drill runs is enough to take us out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go straight for the Shadow Ball in case he decides to call the bait, because usually you go for the Ominous Wind. Luckily, he doesn't shield that. If I had gone for the Ominous Wind, there is a chance I might have needed to shield myself and I would waste a shield. Now back up against the Tapu Fini, I can easily reach a Shadow Ball, and the Tapu Fini Giratina matchup isn't that great for Tapu Fini actually, because the fast move Water Gun is resisted and Tapu Fini is just going to be throwing a bunch of surfs at me. Now I can bring Registeel back in, and Tapu Fini is in Flash Cannon range. However, I'm calling that he has another steel type in the back because of how fast he swapped into that Excadrill. So what I want to do is I'm going to save a move on Registeel and I'm going to swap into Slurpuff to start building up some energy. Luckily, my call was correct. He has a Sand Slash in the back. Unfortunately, my opponent still has 2 shields, so my goal is to get both shields out of the way with Slurpuff, and then maybe save a shield for Registeel in the back and hopefully reach 2 Flash Cannons against Alolan Sand Slash so that I could take it out with Registeel. So I shielded the first Ice Punch, but I'm not going to shield the second one. I can get to this Flamethrower and my switch timer is almost up. So I'm going to switch immediately into Registeel, throw that Flash Cannon, and keep in mind, because Alolan Sand Slash is part Ice type, Flash Cannon is going to be not resisted, it's going to be neutral. So we only need 2 to take it out. Now I do have to watch for the catch in case he decides to catch on his Tapu Fini, but we're not going to throw on alignment, we're going to throw in the middle of his Shadow Claw. So he's not able to catch, the Flash Cannon lands, we take him out, and here my opponent surrenders. GG's to my opponent, we take that first win. Alright, moving into the next battle, we have Registeel versus Galarian Weezing. Now what a lot of players like to do is they like to build up to the overheat and throw it immediately, and then they're going to swap out. So I didn't hit the Flash Cannon just in case my opponent decided to catch, but then my opponent makes a nice catch because I threw on alignment, and he caught the Flash Cannon on his Giratina. But I'm actually okay with this catch because I want the Giratina to be softened up a little bit. This is Giratina altered, which means it's pretty tanky, and versus Slurpuff, it gets a little bit tricky because Slurpuff isn't super bulky. So I'm okay with the catch. I'm going to build up to the Flash Cannon again and then swap out into my Slurpuff. And now a Play Rough should be enough to take him out. I also overfarmed a little bit on my Slurpuff, so I have some residual energy for whatever he decides to bring back in. And he decides to come in with Tapu Fini. Now I'm going to be able to reach 2 Play Roughs, I believe, because my opponent is going to get a little bit greedy with his farming. And yes, we reached that second Play Rough. This isn't going to be enough to take him out, unfortunately though, but it puts him in farm down range for Registeel. However, I think he has a Surf built up, and I'm expecting him to blindly throw Surf, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in Giratina Origin. He doesn't throw it, he hangs onto it, and here I attempted to catch a Play Rough in case he had Play Rough, but it turns out he has Brutal Swing. But that's okay, we can easily take that Brutal Swing. We're going to throw Flash Cannon. This should take his first shield, and then we can get his second shield as well. Luckily, we reach it before he reaches an overheat, throwing that flash cannon, taking his second shield. And now, I'm gonna let Registeel go because his shields are down, and Giratina with a shield can do really well against this Weezing. But he throws Brutal Swing. Now he's forced to throw all his energy because another Brutal Swing isn't gonna take out Registeel. He tried to catch on Tapu Fini. I called the catch. Luckily, I didn't throw the Shadow Ball. And now the Shadow Ball is enough to take the Weezing out, and we take that win. GG's to my opponent, well played. Moving on to the next game, we have a Registeel mirror match. This is a little bit tricky because I don't have Focus Blast on my Registeel, but I don't know if my opponent has Focus Blast. There is a possibility that my opponent could be running the same moveset that I'm running. And it looks like I might be right. It looks like it's going to be Zap Cannon and Flash Cannon as well. I know a lot of people don't want to TM that Zap Cannon off of their Registeel because it's going to cost another Elite TM to get it back on there, and a lot of people probably can't build another Registeel with Focus Blast, so it makes sense. Unfortunately, he wins CMP, so if we had stayed in this matchup, he would definitely have won that, but my opponent swapped out into Haxorus, and I immediately swap into Slurpuff. I know he has Earthquake, but a lot of people have been baiting with Breaking Swipe first. Unfortunately, I decided to call the bait, and my opponent went immediately for that Earthquake. Now they decide to bring in their Alolan Sandslash, which makes sense because Registeel isn't going to be able to farm me down completely because I'm still a little bit healthy, but luckily I'm able to reach a Flamethrower and take one of his shields. Now I kind of want him to throw his energy on my Registeel, so I hope he throws his energy. I'm gonna let this go. It's just gonna be an Ice Punch, but Registeel is in Ice Punch range, and I'm hoping that Giratina with 2 shields can do some work, but it's looking like this game is lost for us. So he's gonna take both of my shields here. I'm gonna shield up the Ice Punches because they do the most damage. Both shields gone. I don't know if I should have baited here. Maybe I should have, but I was thinking that my win con would be if he called the bait and he didn't shield, and then a Shadow Ball would maybe take him out, but unfortunately he shielded, and this Ice Punch put us in lock-on range, and unfortunately we take the loss on that game. Well played to my opponent. Moving on to the next game, we have Registeel into Galarian Weezing again. So I'm expecting him to build up to the overheat and throw it immediately. However, this time I'm going to CMP tie with him on the Flash Cannon, that way he can take one of his shields. Luckily we CMP tie, he threw the overheat. Now he has to swap out to clear the debuff. And what's he gonna swap into? Giratina Origin, which is one of the most common save swaps in this cup. I'm gonna swap immediately into Slurpuff. No need to soften up the Giratina Origin with a Flash Cannon because it's a lot squishier than Giratina Altered. So bringing in Slurpuff, gonna build up a little bit of extra energy and then gonna throw the Play Rough. Luckily he doesn't shield, and unfortunately, he gets to the Ominous Wind, but I'm going to let Slurpuff go because I'm actually calling Tapu Fini in the back. I've seen this ABA Fairy and Giratina in the middle, so I feel like a little bit of energy on Registeel is going to be really good for me. Now my opponent brings back in Galarian Weezing, so I'm starting to think I might be right. I go for the Flash Cannon and he doesn't shield it. I guess he's saving the shield for whatever he has in the back. I attempt to catch an overheat on Giratina, but my opponent went straight for the Play Rough, which makes sense. I guess he didn't want to debuff himself. My opponent was expecting me to use my last shield there, and then with shields down, he could throw a non-debuffed overheat onto my Registeel, and then that would have put him in a better situation. But we still take that win. My opponent decides to surrender there. Moving on to the next battle, I saw this opponent's ELO and they're at 2978, so I decided that regardless of what happens, I'm going to quit for them, and we RPS them pretty badly, so I'm glad I was able to give them this win. On the lead, we had Registeel into Clefable, which is super dominant for Registeel, so unfortunate for my opponent. They swap immediately into Giratina Origin, and I don't know why I wasn't faster on the swap to go into Slurpuff, but I decided to take one of the Shadow Balls on my Registeel and then bring in Slurpuff. Now we're going to build up to a Play Rough, and I should be able to outpace before this Giratina reaches another move. And we go for that Play Rough, and I'm fully expecting them to shield because they definitely want to win switch here, and they definitely can, but My opponent messes up here and brings Clefable back in. My opponent could have easily won that switch because I messed up and I was really slow on the swap, but this move is very questionable for my opponent. If they had stayed in with Giratina and attempted to win switch, then their Clefable would have lined up with my Giratina Origin, and you'll see right now he has something in the back that's very weak to Giratina Origin. I do have to watch out for the little bit of energy that they saved on their own Giratina. So my opponent brings in the S-Cav and I can bring in Giratina immediately because our switch timers are a little bit desynced. He throws that first drill run. I'm not going to shield. I know that this Giratina has energy and I would rather shield that. I'm going to attempt to farm down all the way. Unfortunately, he reaches another move and he takes both of my shields. But I have so much energy built up. I can go for the double Shadow Ball on the S-Cav, but I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to throw the Ominous Wind and then top left. I had a feeling my opponent wouldn't shield that, and I didn't want to take him out. So GG's to my opponent. I really hope he reached Legend in this set. So in this first set, we basically got a 4-1. If I hadn't left for that last opponent, it would have been a 4-1, but I'm not about gatekeeping people, so I'll take the 3-2. But as you can see, this team is performing really well, and coming up next is the 5-0, so definitely stay tuned for that. We're going to have some amazing battles in the next set. Moving on to the first game, we have Registeel on the lead into Giratina Origin. The way I like to play this is I will stay in with the Registeel and I'm going to go for 2 Flash Cannons because that's enough to KO. 2 Shadow Balls from him, however, will not be enough to KO me. So going for that first Flash Cannon, that's going to get him past half health, and then I'm going to build up to that second Flash Cannon, fully expecting it to take one of his shields because my opponent is going to try to win the lead. After I take his shield, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap immediately into my own Giratina, and I'm going to attempt to farm him down completely because Giratina with energy is super deadly in this cup. There's nothing really that resists it, so I'm going to shield once and farm down. Now we're ahead by a lot of energy and my opponent brings in Scissor. This is perfect, this is where we want to see it. I'm going to go straight for the Shadow Ball in case my opponent calls the bait, but they don't, and then this gets their last shield and I can outpace to the next Shadow Ball before they get to another Night Slash. And this is definitely going to be enough to KO because Scissor is super squishy. I know it's still in the green, but it takes him out. And now he brings back in Giratina and I can farm down completely. And my opponent decides to top left here. Unfortunately, we don't get to find out what he had in the back. I really wanted to know. But anyways, moving on to the next match, we have Registeel into Giratina again. Okay, I'm going to play this exactly how I played it in the last match. I'm going to throw the 2 Flash Cannons against the Giratina and hopefully take 1 shield and then come back in with my own Giratina and farm down. I'm just going to speed this part up because you guys already know what's going to happen, and it's basically a mirror scenario of exactly what happened in the last game. And we successfully get the shield, and then we bring in our own Giratina. Luckily he's staying in so that I can farm him, but he swaps out with energy and he brings in his own Registeel. So Registeel being his best answer to Giratina is kind of good for me. The lock-ons are resisted and there's no fast move pressure from Registeel. Also, I'd rather see this here now instead of against Slurpuff because those Flash Cannons are going to be super effective against Slurpuff. I do decide to shield the first move, but he ends up throwing Zap Cannon, so I'm guessing he might not have Flash Cannon. I'm going to no-shield the next one, expecting another Zap Cannon. He goes Focus Blast, okay, which is even more resisted. Now I'm going to farm up all the way, and he brings back in his own Giratina, and before he can snipe me, I go for that Ominous Wind. He shields, and I'm actually going to mirror the shield here because I have so much energy stored on my own Giratina and I don't want to lose it. I'm going to farm up a little bit more. I think I probably could have farmed him down all the way, and I go for that Ominous Wind to take out his Giratina. Now let's see what's in the back. His Registeel is 1 HP, so I'm not too worried about it. He has S-Cav in the back. This is GG's for us. This is an easy 1 game. 2 drill runs are not enough to take out Slurpuff, and I can easily reach a Flamethrower on my Slurpuff against this Pokemon. I do, however, pressure him to throw his energy here because I was almost at a move, and it's an Acid Spray, and I'm expecting him to go for another Acid Spray here, although I think Slurpuff, even debuffed, might survive a drill run from this range. I also expected him to try to catch. Luckily, we don't throw that Flamethrower, we hold on to it, and now I can throw it against the SCAV and we take him out and take that win. GG's to my opponent. Now moving on to the next game, we have Registeel into SCAV. Really bad lead for me, so I'm immediately going to swap into my Giratina, and my opponent is going to swap Ninetales. Okay, so this is tricky. I'm going to go straight for the Shadow Ball, but my opponent decides to shield here, which is actually really good for me because with shield advantage, my backline can do pretty well, especially against SCAV. SCAV is pretty squishy, so even Registeel with shields can do decent against SCAV. Now my opponent goes ahead and throws another Weather Ball before I can reach a move on my Giratina, and now I can bring in Registeel, and I'm going to farm up all the way to 100 energy before throwing the Flash Cannon on Alolan Ninetales. Now after I throw this Flash Cannon, I'm going to swap immediately into Slurpuff because I want to start building up energy as fast as I can. And my opponent brings in Tapu Fini, and I need 2 play-offs to land, but my opponent has 1 shield left, so I'm gonna get the next shield out of the way with this next play rough. Now I have to make a decision on whether or not I'll shield, and I decided to shield. Even if it was gonna be a Surf, I was gonna shield it, but my opponent went for Moonblast, and this is actually my win condition. I shielded the Moonblast. Now I can land 2 more play roughs, or reach 2 more play roughs. One will take his shield, and the second one will land and take out his Tapu Fini. And now I can easily reach a Flamethrower versus the SCAV, but my opponent backs out and we take that win. Okay, on to the next match. We have Registeel into Giratina Origin again. I think this is the third Giratina Origin lead that we've seen. Again, I'm going to speed this up because you guys already know how I play this. I stay in with Registeel, and I'm going to aim to throw 2 Flash Cannons, and hopefully the second Flash Cannon gets shielded. However, my opponent decides to play it out a little bit different in this game. He doesn't shield my second Flash Cannon. Instead, he immediately brings in Scissor, and I'm a little bit slow on the swap into Giratina because my backline is really weak to Scissor and I wasn't really sure what to swap, so I messed up and I swapped a little bit late, but I'm gonna go for these Ominous Winds, and the first one gets his shield, and I'm just hoping that he doesn't shield the second one. I'm gonna shield one of his Night Slashes, but I need to save one of my shields for Slurpuff in case it does have to go up against this Scissor. So luckily, he didn't shield my second Ominous Wind, and he throws all his energy on Giratina here, and now I can bring in Slurpuff and farm down. Now what does my opponent have in the back? He has Alolan Sandslash. So my opponent goes for the catch here. I almost fall for it, but luckily I hang on to my energy, and I need to just get to 2 Flamethrowers, one to take out his last shield, and the second one to hopefully KO this Alolan Sandslash. So I can easily take the first move. The second one I'm going to shield, and then let's see if this Flamethrower is enough to take out the Sandslash. Let's hope it is. And it KOs! GG's to my opponent, and we take another win in this set. Now we're moving on to the final battle. I hope you guys have been enjoying this video so far, and I hope you guys give this team a try. Let's get into the final battle. We have Registeel against Tapu Fini. Amazing lead for me. Immediately my opponent swaps into SCAV, and I can immediately wall it with my Giratina. Well, not exactly wall, but these drill runs do nothing and the counters are doing nothing, so this is an easy win for me. I go straight for the Shadow Ball. He could shield here, but he's most likely not going to win switch, so I doubt he's going to shield. I'm going to let the second drill run go. It doesn't KO, and I'm going to be in the red. But even if he brings Tapu Fini back in, he would have had to take another move. Instead, he's going to bring in his Alolan Sandslash, and the Shadow Ball goes unshielded, and now he's at half health. I bring Slurpuff back in because Reggie has the better matchup against Tapu Fini, so I'm going to save Reggie for Tapu Fini. I'm actually going to soak up all this energy on Slurpuff, not going to shield. I will shield this one though, because I was expecting him to attempt to catch the Flamethrower, that's why I didn't throw it. He does immediately switch back into Tapu Fini right after throwing his energy, and I save all that energy I built up on Slurpuff, and I swap immediately back into my Registeel. I'm gonna go for the Zap Cannon hoping to get a debuff, but really I could have gone for 2 Flash Cannons against Tapu Fini because I need 2 moves to take it out anyways, but I'm not expecting him to shield this next Flash Cannon. So I throw the Flash Cannon, take out his Tapu, and now this Sandslash has 2 shields left, and it's going to be tricky because I have no fast move pressure at all on the 2 Pokemon I have left. However, I'm able to reach a Flash Cannon on my Registeel and take his first shield. And now I'm almost at 2 Flamethrowers on Slurpuff. The first one takes his last shield, and I'm going to reach the second one before he reaches a move. And this is going to KO him. GG's to my opponent. We end with an amazing win. Well, technically that was kind of RPS, but Alolan Sandslash is really tricky for the team. But as you can see, Slurpuff against all these double weak to fire Pokemon is really, really good, especially with Shield Stat. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Maybe leave a like on the video, it helps me out a lot. And if you try out the team, let me know if it works for you. I hope you guys are able to reach your goals this season, maybe even reach Legend, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!